Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're cracking open the secrets of the sage archetype.
Ooh, I love it.
So have you ever wondered what makes those wise figures tick?
Right, those characters who always seem to have the answer.
Exactly. We're going to break it all down, their characteristics, their motivations, even those moments where they might feel a little less wise.
It's fascinating because the sage really embodies that universal human desire for knowledge. I mean, we all want to understand the world around us, right?
Absolutely. But I think it goes deeper than just accumulating facts.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about being a walking encyclopedia. It's about that pursuit of truth and what we do with that knowledge once we have it.
Okay, now I'm thinking about all those classic wise characters, Yoda, Gandalf.
Oh, yeah, the classic.
They definitely fit the bill. But what actually sets a true sage apart? What are the key ingredients that make them tick?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the wise part. Sages are incredibly intellectual and analytical.
So they're constantly thinking, analyzing, trying to figure things out.
All the time. They're always asking why, like digging deep to understand the root causes and those hidden connections.
So they're not satisfied with just surface level explanations.
Nope, they got to go deeper. They're not satisfied until they get to the heart of the matter.
So they're like the ultimate detectives of knowledge, always searching for clues and piecing together the bigger picture.
Exactly. And that drive to understand, it leads them to be incredibly introspective and reflective.
Meaning,
Well, they're constantly examining their own experiences and beliefs, trying to refine their understanding of the world.
it's like they're always looking inward as well as outward.
Yeah, it's a constant process of self-reflection and growth. But it's not all about thinking, though. Sages are also incredibly patient and disciplined.
I guess you have to be if you're on a quest for knowledge.
Exactly. They understand that true wisdom, it takes time. It takes dedicated effort.
So it's not like they're not just accumulating knowledge, but also really working on themselves, constantly striving to become better, more insightful versions of themselves.
Absolutely. It's a lifelong process of self-improvement and growth.
I love that. But here's what I find really interesting. The sage isn't driven by ego. They're not obsessed with being right.
Right.
It seems like they have this deep-seated moral compass that guides their actions.
Yeah, they're not just smart, they're good. They want to use their knowledge ethically, responsibly, to make a positive impact on the world.
So it's not just about what they know, but how they use it. That moral core, that seems like a defining characteristic.
It really is.
And it makes me think of figures like Nelson Mandela, who fought for justice his entire life, or scientists who are raising the alarm about climate change. They're all driven by something bigger than themselves.
And that brings us to the motivations and desires that fuel the sage. At their core, they're on this relentless pursuit of truth.
So they want to peel back the layers of reality to understand those fundamental principles that govern the universe and the human experience.
Absolutely. And it's not just a passive pursuit. They're actively seeking, questioning, exploring, like scientists constantly testing hypotheses, pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Exactly. It's like an insatiable thirst for knowledge.
They're not just collecting facts. They're seeking those profound truths that can help us understand the meaning of life.
You got it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it goes beyond just gathering information, right?
Totally. What else is there?
Well, they crave wisdom and mastery.
So it's not just about knowing the rules of the game. It's about understanding the strategies, the nuances, the deeper elements that lead to success.
Yes. They want to become masters of their craft, not just skilled practitioners.
It's about reaching that level of deep understanding where you can see the connections, the patterns, the underlying principles that others might miss.
Exactly. But here's another important piece. Sages don't hoard their wisdom.
Oh, that's good. What do they do with it?
They actually have this genuine desire to help others understand.
Like they want to spread the knowledge around.
Yeah, exactly. They're often drawn to roles as mentors, teachers, guides. Oh, I can see that. Think about the impact a great teacher can have. They don't just impart information, they illuminate the path, helping others discover their own potential.
Yes. And they don't just tell people what to think, they teach them how to think.
That makes me think about those moments when a teacher explained something in a way that just clicked, and suddenly a whole new world of understanding opened up.
That's exactly the kind of impact a sage aims to have. They want to empower others with knowledge, encourage them to think critically, and to see the world from different perspectives.
Okay, but as you've been describing this, I've been thinking, Sages must feel incredible pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what if they get something wrong? Do they ever have those moments of doubt?
That's a great question. And it's true, even with all their wisdom, sages are not immune to fears and challenges. In fact, their greatest fear is often ignorance.
Ignorance.
Yeah, both their own and that of others. The thought of being misinformed or misleading someone, it's deeply troubling to them.
Oh, I can see that. It goes against their core values. I can see how that would be a major fear for someone who values truth so highly. Imagine spending your life seeking knowledge and then realizing you might have gotten something wrong, or even worse, misled someone.
Exactly. It's almost like a fear of letting themselves and others down, right? They hold themselves to such a high standard when it comes to truth and accuracy.
So they have this huge responsibility not only to seek knowledge, but to ensure that what they're sharing is actually true and accurate.
It's a heavy burden, for sure.
Especially in today's world, where misinformation spreads so easily, that seems like a huge weight to carry.
You're telling me. And that fear of ignorance, it goes hand in hand with a broader concern about deception and misinformation in general. They worry about how falsehoods can cloud judgment and steer people away from the truth.
So in a way, it's like they're the guardians of truth, fighting against the forces of ignorance and misinformation.
I like that. They're like truth warriors, always on the lookout for those sneaky deceptions.
So are there other anxieties that might plague a sage?
Well, it might sound surprising, but even with all their knowledge, sages can struggle with feelings of intellectual inferiority.
What? Really?
Yeah, it's that constant awareness that there's always more to learn, right?
So even they feel like they don't know enough.
They can be incredibly self-critical, feeling like they haven't mastered enough, like they're always falling short.
Wow. That's so relatable. I think everyone feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Like there's always something more to know, some skill to master.
For sure. But for a sage whose whole identity is built around knowledge, that pressure must be amplified tenfold.
No kidding. It's like their whole world is built on knowledge, and if they feel like they're not good enough, that must be really tough.
And then there's the challenge of connection.
Connection.
Yeah, because they think so deeply and analytically, they might struggle to relate to people who don't share their intellectual curiosity. It's like they're speaking a different language sometimes, one that not everyone understands.
Yeah, I get that. It's like being in a room full of people talking about the latest reality show and you're trying to explain string theory. It's not that you think you're better than them. It's just that your interests and the way you see the world are just fundamentally different.
Exactly. And that can lead to a lot of loneliness. They might feel like they don't quite fit in, like their way of thinking sets them apart.
That makes sense. And then on top of that, there's the risk of analysis paralysis.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So they get stuck in their heads, overthinking every angle to the point where they struggle to make a decision or take action.
They see all the possibilities, all the potential consequences, and they end up frozen in place.
It's like their own mind becomes a maze.
Exactly. It's a classic paradox. They have all this wisdom, all this knowledge, but it can actually hinder their ability to move forward.
So even with all their wisdom, sages are not immune to very human struggles. The fear of being wrong, the pressure to constantly learn, the feeling of not belonging, and even getting stuck in their own heads. It's kind of comforting to know they face challenges too.
It definitely makes them more relatable.
Right. Makes them seem a bit more human. But let's talk about the positive side. Despite these challenges, they must bring some incredible strengths to the table, right?
Of course.
What makes them so valuable, both to individuals and society as a whole?
Well, sages, even with these challenges, they bring a lot of strength and positive contributions to the table. They're not just wise, they're incredible assets.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of unique strengths do sages bring to the table? How do they use their knowledge and wisdom to make a positive impact?
One of their greatest strengths is their ability to provide clarity and insight. They're like intellectual translators, you know.
Really?
They can take those complex ideas, the ones that make your head spin, and distill them into something understandable. It's like they can shine a light through the fog, helping others see things from a fresh perspective.
They're like those friends who can explain a complicated movie plot in a way that makes perfect sense even if you weren't paying attention. They can make the confusing clear. But it's more than just explaining things right. They're not just walking dictionaries.
Absolutely. They guide with wisdom and integrity. They don't just give you the facts. They help you understand the deeper meaning, the ethical implications, the bigger picture.
I see. So it's about helping people understand the why behind things, not just the what.
Exactly. And they're incredible mentors, leading by example and helping others reach their full potential. It's not about telling people what to do, it's about empowering them to make their own informed choices.
As you're describing this, I'm starting to see why the sage archetype is so revered. They're not just smart, they use their knowledge for good. It's about wisdom with a conscience, which is so relevant in today's world where it feels like we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides.
And that brings us to another key contribution that sages make, encouraging critical thinking.
So they inspire curiosity, pushing people to question assumptions and look for evidence before forming opinions. It's that ability to step back, to question the narrative, to not just accept things at face value. That's incredibly valuable in a world where misinformation spreads like wildfire.
It is. They're like the ultimate fact checkers, always digging deeper, always seeking the truth, even if it's uncomfortable or challenges their own beliefs.
That's so important because it's easy to get swept up in the latest trends or the loudest voices without really stopping to think critically.
And because they're so methodical and analytical, they tend to make informed decisions.
So they don't just jump to conclusions.
No way. They weigh options carefully, considering not just the practical consequences, but also the ethical implications of their choices.
It's not just about what's smart or efficient, but what's right.
Exactly. And you know something else?
What's that?
The research actually highlights how sages often play a role in safeguarding knowledge for future generations.
Really?
Think about historians, archivists, those who dedicate their lives to preserving stories, cultural heritage, and even scientific discoveries.
Wow. So they're not just about personal growth and wisdom. They're also concerned with the well-being of future generations.
They're like the ultimate long-term thinkers. But, you know, the source material also stresses that being a sage isn't just about being a brilliant mind. It's about finding balance, especially between wisdom and humility.
Why is that so important?
Well, it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of knowledge, to become arrogant or dismissive of others who haven't reached the same level of understanding. But true sages understand that learning is a lifelong journey, and no one has all the answers.
So it's about being wise but not arrogant.
Exactly. Always open to learning and growing. You can be incredibly knowledgeable, but still be willing to admit when you don't know something to learn from others.
You can learn from anyone, even from those you might consider less wise.
Precisely. Humility is crucial. It allows sages to connect with others on a deeper level, to build trust and foster collaboration. And speaking of connection, the source material also emphasizes the importance of emotional intelligence.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. So it's not enough to be a walking encyclopedia. You also need to understand people, emotions, relationships. Tell me more about that.
It's crucial. Sages can sometimes get so caught up in the world of ideas that they forget to connect with people on an emotional level. Developing emotional intelligence helps them build stronger relationships, understand different perspectives, and avoid unintentionally hurting others.
So it's about recognizing that knowledge without empathy can be cold and isolating.
Exactly. It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't connect with people on a human level, it's all for nothing.
You're right. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't relate to others or understand their feelings, you're not going to get very far.
And that ties into another key piece of advice from the source material: finding the balance between analysis and action. Sages can sometimes get stuck in overthinking mode.
So they analyze every angle to the point where they hesitate to make a decision or take a leap of faith.
You got it.
It's like their brilliant minds can also be their biggest obstacle.
Sometimes it's all about finding that balance.
This is all fascinating stuff. We've covered so much ground already, from the sage's insatiable curiosity to their deep-seated moral compass. And we've even touched on some of the challenges they face, like the fear of ignorance and the struggle to balance thinking and doing. But there's so much more to explore.
There is. We've only just scratched the surface.
I'm already hooked. But before we go any further, let's take a moment to let everything sink in. We'll be back in a flash to continue our exploration of the sage archetype, including how it can help us navigate the complexities of the modern world. Stay tuned.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Huh?
We've been on this fascinating journey exploring the world of the sage archetype. You know, those figures who embody wisdom, truth, and a constant thirst for knowledge.
It's like they're on a never-ending quest for understanding.
Exactly. And we've been talking about how those qualities are more important than ever in today's world, right?
Yeah.
Where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Oh, totally. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
It really is. And we're also faced with some seriously complex issues.
Like, how do we even know what's true anymore with all the misinformation out there?
Right. It can feel overwhelming, to say the least.
It makes you wonder, how do we even begin to sift through it all? Where do we even start?
And that's precisely where the sage archetype shines.
Oh, tell me more.
They're not passive consumers of information.
Like, they don't just blindly accept whatever they see or hear.
Exactly. They're critical thinkers.
So they question assumptions, they look for evidence, they analyze the source.
They're like the ultimate BS detectors in a world overflowing with it.
I love that analogy. So instead of just accepting what they see or hear, they're digging deeper, asking those tough questions.
In a way, they're modeling the kind of thinking we all need to cultivate in this age of information overload.
Absolutely. It's like they have this built-in radar for misinformation.
And remember, the sage isn't just driven by a thirst for knowledge's sake.
Right, they're not just trivia buffs.
They have that strong moral compass, that desire to use what they know to make a positive impact.
Like they want to make the world a better place.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting. Because with all the ethical dilemmas we're facing today, from the impact of artificial intelligence to questions about data privacy and climate change, we desperately need people who can think critically and act with integrity.
Oh, for sure. The world needs more sages now more than ever.
It's like we need their guidance just to navigate daily life.
Think about the challenges we face with all the propaganda and misinformation online.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It takes a sage-like mindset to be discerning, to recognize bias, to seek out those credible sources.
Otherwise, we're just caught in this whirlwind of opinions and spin, unable to find our footing.
It's like we're all trying to navigate this vast, uncharted sea of information, and the sage is the experienced captain who can guide us through the storms and help us find our way.
I love that analogy. So they can help us chart a course through all the noise and find those reliable sources of truth.
And the beautiful thing is that the sage archetype offers a blueprint for how we can all do this.
Oh, really?
It's about embracing lifelong learning, staying curious, and constantly refining our understanding of the world.
Okay, I'm totally on board with the idea of channeling my inner sage. But let's get practical here.
Right.
What are some concrete steps we can all take to cultivate those sage-like qualities in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to magically transform into Yoda overnight, right?
You're right. It's a journey, not a destination.
But how do we even get started?
The good news is there are simple yet powerful practices we can all incorporate into our lives to start cultivating that sage-like wisdom.
Of what?
Well, one practice is to simply start by questioning assumptions.
Questioning
You
assumptions.
take things at face value.
Instead of just blindly believing what we read or hear.
Exactly. It's about pausing, taking a breath, and asking yourself, is this true? What's the evidence? Is there another perspective I'm not considering?
So it's about hitting the pause button before hitting the share button.
I like that.
It's about becoming more mindful of how we consume and share information.
So instead of just reacting, we take a moment to reflect.
We ask ourselves, wait, is this really true? Or am I just buying into someone else's narrative?
Exactly.
So what's another practical step we can take?
Well, another one is to actively seek out diverse perspectives.
Meaning?
Don't just stay in your own echo chamber,
You mean don't just surround ourselves with people who agree with us all the time?
right? It's easy to fall into that trap, especially online, where algorithms feed us content that reinforces our existing beliefs.
You kidding?
Challenge yourself to read articles or books from authors with different viewpoints, even if you initially disagree with them.
So step outside of our comfort zones.
It might feel uncomfortable at first.
But it's all about stretching those mental muscles and opening ourselves up to new ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. And it's amazing how much you can learn from stepping outside your comfort zone.
So we've been talking a lot about the intellectual side of things. What about the emotional side of the sage? We mentioned emotional intelligence earlier.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
How does that fit into the picture?
Emotional intelligence is a key ingredient in the sage's toolkit.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Remember, they're not just brilliant minds, they're also compassionate and empathetic individuals who understand the importance of connection and relationships.
So it's not about becoming a cold, calculating logic machine. It's about balancing that intellect with heart.
Exactly. And that can be a challenge even for sages.
In what way?
Well, remember, they're often drawn to deep thought and analysis.
Right. Always trying to figure things out.
It can sometimes lead to them getting lost to their heads.
Ah, I see what you mean.
You get so focused on dissecting ideas and solving problems that you forget to tune into the emotions of the people around you.
Yeah, you might accidentally come across as distant or insensitive.
Exactly. And that's why cultivating emotional intelligence is so crucial for sages.
So how do they do that?
Well, it's about developing self-awareness.
Becoming more aware of our own emotions,
Yes. And also being able to manage those emotions effectively.
so we don't let them run wild.
Exactly. And then there's empathy.
That ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
Right. It's about recognizing that even the wisest among us are still human.
We all have feelings and vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. So it's not just about being smart, it's about being kind, compassionate, and aware of how your words and actions impact others.
It's a good reminder that even sages are works in progress.
And that brings us to another important point, that fear of ignorance, that sense of inadequacy, that struggle to balance thinking and doing.
And these are all challenges that sages face.
They are, and you know what? They're universal human experiences.
You mean we all grapple with them to some degree?
Exactly. We're all on this journey of self-discovery and growth.
It's comforting to know that even the wisest among us have those moments of doubt and uncertainty.
Right. It makes them seem more human, more relatable.
The sage archetype isn't about achieving some unattainable level of perfection.
It's about striving for growth and understanding even amidst our imperfections.
We're all learning, evolving, and trying to make sense of this crazy world.
We are. The sage archetype reminds us that we're all on a quest for knowledge and meaning.
And that by embracing curiosity, humility, and a willingness to learn,
We can all tap into a deeper wisdom within ourselves.
I love that. So how can we translate this into concrete actions? What are some things our listeners can do to cultivate that sage energy in their daily lives?
Well, one powerful practice is to simply dedicate time for reflection and introspection.
Reflection and introspection.
It doesn't have to be hours of meditation in a silent retreat.
So I don't have to go live in a cave.
You don't have to go that far. But even a few minutes each day to pause, disconnect from the digital world, and tune into your own thoughts and feelings.
So like put down the phone, step away from the computer, and just be present with ourselves for a few minutes.
Exactly. Give our minds a chance to quiet down and listen to that inner voice.
Yeah, in a world that's constantly demanding our attention, those moments of stillness can be incredibly valuable.
They really can.
It sounds simple, but in today's fast-paced world, it's so easy to get swept away by the constant stream of information and distractions.
It is. Carving out that space for quiet reflection can be incredibly powerful.
What else can we do to bring more of that sage energy into our lives?
Another practice is to cultivate a love of learning.
So make time for reading, exploring new subjects, taking classes, or even just having deep conversations with people who inspire you.
Exactly. It's about feeding that curiosity, that thirst for knowledge that makes us feel alive and engaged with the world.
It's about remembering that learning isn't just something we do in school. It's a lifelong adventure.
And don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
Oh, I like that.
Challenge your own beliefs, seek out different perspectives, and embrace the discomfort that comes with expanding your understanding.
So that's not always about staying in our safe little bubbles.
Sometimes you got to shake things up.
It's about embracing the unknown, the things that make us think differently and question what we thought we knew.
And being willing to be wrong, to be surprised, to constantly evolve our understanding.
That's a powerful reminder that growth often happens outside of our comfort zones.
And finally, remember that the sage isn't just about accumulating knowledge for personal gain.
Okay, so what's it about then?
It's about sharing that knowledge with others, using it to make a positive impact on the world around you.
So find ways to share your wisdom, whether it's through teaching, mentoring, volunteering, or simply engaging in thoughtful conversations with friends and family.
Exactly.
It's about giving back, contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
That's the beautiful thing about the sage archetype. It's not just about individual enlightenment.
It's about using knowledge and wisdom to create a more just and compassionate world.
Exactly. It's about making a difference.
This has been such an inspiring deep dive into the sage archetype. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, but we've already uncovered so much wisdom and practical advice.
I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how this archetype manifests in the real world.
Okay.
Who are some modern-day figures who embody the sage archetype? Who are the sages of our time?
That's a great question. And it's tricky because true wisdom often reveals itself over time. But there are definitely individuals who stand out for their intellectual prowess, their commitment to truth, and their desire to use their knowledge for good.
Okay, give us some names. Who comes to mind?
Well, someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson immediately comes to mind.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's an astrophysicist who's made science accessible and engaging for millions of people.
I love his shows. He's so passionate and engaging.
He doesn't just talk about black holes and galaxies. He connects those scientific wonders to the human experience, sparking our curiosity and sense of wonder.
Yeah, he's got that gift of explaining complex ideas in a way that makes you go, oh, I get it now.
And not only that, but he's passionate about education and critical thinking. He encourages people to question, to explore, to embrace the scientific method as a way of understanding the world. That's a very sage-like quality, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He's not afraid to tackle tough questions, to challenge conventional thinking, and to advocate for scientific literacy.
I admire his courage and passion for knowledge. They're so central to the sage archetype.
I'm also thinking about people like Malala Yousafzai, who, despite facing incredible adversity, has become a powerful voice for education and women's rights.
She's an amazing example of courage and resilience.
She's shown incredible strength using her platform to advocate for change and to empower others.
She embodies that courage and ethical drive that are so central to the sage archetype.
It's not just about what she knows, it's about how she uses that knowledge to make a difference.
It's amazing to think about the impact that individuals like her can have, not just through their knowledge, but through their actions and their unwavering commitment to their values.
And that's a key point, right? The sage archetype isn't just about being smart or well-read.
It's about living a life of purpose guided by wisdom and integrity.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all aspire to, regardless of our profession or background. We can all strive to be a little more sage-like in our daily lives.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the sage archetype, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the most important thing is that wisdom is a journey, not a destination.
It's not about having all the answers.
It's about being curious, open-minded, and committed to lifelong learning.
So embrace that inner student, that thirst for knowledge, that desire to understand the world around you.
Just remember, you don't have to be a scholar or a guru to embody the sage archetype.
It's about cultivating that wisdom within yourself and using it to make a positive impact on the world in whatever way you can.
Beautifully said. This has been such an enlightening exploration of the sage archetype. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the power of wisdom and the importance of lifelong learning.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Mm-hmm.
And to our listeners, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep sharing your own unique wisdom with the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of the sage. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's been so interesting learning about the sage archetype.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Those figures, who embody wisdom, truth, and this constant search for knowledge.
Right. They never stop learning.
Exactly. And we talk about how these qualities, they're more crucial than ever in today's world.
Oh, I totally agree.
Think about it. We're flooded with information constantly.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
And we're facing all these complex ethical challenges. Like, it's almost like you need a sage's guidance just to, handle everyday life.
Seriously? Sometimes it feels like you need a wise mentor just to check your newsfeed.
I know, right? So before we finish up this deep dive, I have one more question for you.
Okay, shoot.
We've been talking about sages from, mythology and literature and history and all that. But who are some modern day figures who embody this archetype? Who are the sages of our time?
That's a great question. And it's tricky because, true wisdom, it often reveals itself over time.
Yeah, you can't always tell right away who the real sages are.
Right. But there are definitely individuals who, they really stand out for their intellectual prowess, their commitment to truth, and their desire to use their knowledge for good.
Okay, so give us some names. I'm ready for some real-world sage spotting.
Okay, well, in the last part, we were talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson and Malala Yousafzai. They're fantastic examples of, modern-day sages. But I think it's also important to remember that the sage archetype, it's not limited to, just famous people or intellectuals.
So it's not just about, having a PhD or writing a best-selling book.
Right.
It's more about how you approach life, how you approach knowledge.
Yeah, it's about your attitude towards learning and truth.
And how you use that understanding to make a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely.
So you might find sage-like qualities, in a teacher who really inspires their students to think critically.
Oh, yeah, a teacher who makes you question everything.
Or like a community leader who works tirelessly to solve problems and make a difference.
Right, someone who's driven by a sense of purpose.
Or even like a grandparent who shares all those life experiences and wisdom with, younger generations.
Love that. It's about passing on those valuable lessons.
So it's not about titles or awards or anything like that.
It's about those core sage qualities.
The pursuit of truth.
The commitment to ethical action.
The willingness to share knowledge and help others, guide them along the way.
Beautifully put.
And that brings us to another point. The sage archetype, it's not about reaching some kind of superhuman level of wisdom or being perfect or anything.
Right. No one's perfect.
It's more about striving for growth, embracing lifelong learning.
Always learning, always growing.
And recognizing that we all make mistakes. We all stumble along the way.
It's all part of the journey.
I think there's a saying, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing.
I love that.
It's kind of a paradox.
Yeah, it is.
But even the wisest people, they're still learning. They're still evolving, still figuring things out.
That's what keeps it interesting.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes the sage archetype so inspiring.
Yeah. What do you think it is about the sage that's so inspiring?
It's that reminder that we all have the potential for wisdom. We can all, cultivate those qualities within ourselves.
Right. We all have that inner sage just waiting to be unleashed.
And that the pursuit of knowledge, it's a journey. It's an adventure that lasts a lifetime.
It never gets boring.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge with us.
It's been my pleasure. We've only just scratched the surface, but I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it means to be truly wise.
Me too.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, never stop seeking, keep questioning, and keep sharing your own unique wisdom with the world.
I love that.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of the sage. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.